Oh, that's all good. I feel like we could have a teleprompter much easier. The importance of having this exhibition in a permanent location, I feel, is vital, for it will define, well, one, the identity of, well, Carbondale or Southern Illinois, because it's very rare that a region will have two occurrences of a total eclipse. It's pretty rare. It does happen in other parts of the globe, but why not have a memorial or some sort of sculptural art piece that commemorates this? In addition to that, that piece giving recognition, providing recognition to Native American cultures that are part of the region, part of the history that precedes Western settlement. So I think it's can help in terms of, when you think about the tourism, it also will serve as a feature for Carbondale in Southern Illinois. A tourist could, there's chances that a tourist may be unfamiliar with Native American folklore or stories, or just the history, and this would be a great opportunity to provide this representation of this Native American culture, both the Kaskaskia and the Shawnee, and additionally have a piece that obviously references the solar eclipse as well. Beyond just a picture, like this becomes a more immersive experience.
If you feel like you've gotten what you need, then you don't have to stay, but you can stay.
No, it's great. Keep up the work. Do you want to talk about the, have you read about the Substitute King? It's one of my favorite stories. So
The Substitute King?
Yeah.
Sure.
I always look that up.
Okay, just
Are you
go.
not here? There's your phone.
Oh. Just wait till she's... So the story, what's the story?
The story of the Substitute King. So in addition to the 8 Native American stories or references in the installation, there's some terminology that is owed to Mesopotamia culture, which ancient Mesopotamia civilization, they were the first to take meticulous notes about the observation of the stars, specifically the eclipse. So I felt it was appropriate to include the story of the Substitute King, which it's not animal related, but it is an interesting story which relates to the Babylonian king during an eclipse. Actually, I can't remember if it was 2 weeks or 2 months prior to the eclipse, but either way, Mesopotamian, they knew when an eclipse was to occur, and they also feared that something bad was going to happen to the king. So as precautionary measures were considered, the king, the royal court, would choose a commoner to sit in the king's throne, treat the commoner as they were the king, and also provide a substitute queen. So the king would not be in sight during the eclipse. Not until after the eclipse, the real king would reemerge, and the substitute king would tragically be sacrificed. So it does have it's a very sad story, from the perspective of the commoner. So the substitute king, I've made a sculpture that is of that. There are references to from the cloak to the keffiyeh that's worn on the head, and there's also the sculptural form has the heart and the rib cage and the bones and the skull and the brain exposed. So it's a reference to the obviously physical trauma that the commoner would be incurring. So a lot of times sculptures from this region, they're of royalty. You don't see sculptures of the common person. So it's more of a giving presence to the commoner, showing the commoner as this person of sacrifice. So it's a sad tale, but I feel like it was important because it really defines civilization at large, with ancient Babylonian playing a pivotal role in the science of and study of the sun, moon, and stars. And they serve as kind of like the foundation and basis. So that's why I decided to include them in the exhibit. And their statue is actually on the outside of the installation. I did want to point out a very important detail about the small sculptural forms. There are, above them are maps. They're actually Sanotype maps. And those maps were from Fred Espenak's archive. So Fred Espenak, a highly respected astrophysicist, he has mapped out the path of totality in hybrid and annual eclipses. I believe the year 3000, like we know where the eclipse will occur in the year 3000. And he has an archive of previous eclipses reaching far back many millennia. And it's mind-blowing that we have the science and the math to develop these maps, and not just to predict them, but also to make reference to where they actually passed in previous times. And that was important for me because when I was reading about the Aztec eclipse, or Choctaw, or Chippewa, or any of the Native American cultures, I would do cross-referencing. I'd read when the stories of certain cultural behaviors took place, and having to cross-reference it with a Fred Espenak to really try to find the year and time in which the stories correlate with the actual geographical location of the Native Americans. So it was kind of a fun puzzle. You learn about geography, you also learn about cultural stories, then there's also obviously the science that's interwoven through all of it. So that's a detail that's specific to the sculptural pieces. And that Fred Espenak's map is also utilized in the Kaskaskia and Shawnee illuminated pieces. It's those maps in which those two giant figures are standing upon.
Okay, I'm just going to ask one more thing before we'll get a little bit of you walking around and maybe pointing out some of the things you've mentioned. When the Simons Foundation gave you like the yes to the grant, tell me a little bit about the work involved that you had to then initiate, you and the
Oh my goodness.
And use that, if you could use the Simons Foundation in your answer.
Right. So I believe in November of 2022, that's when Chuck Binya had asked me if I wanted to be involved with a project related to the total eclipse. I learned that this was being funded by Simons Foundation based in New York City. And I learned more about the Simons Foundation. They're an institution that really wants to advance the scientific inquiry from what's happening out in the cosmos to what's happening on the molecular level. So they created this wonderful initiative where they wanted to partner a scientist with an artist and have an art director or a producer. So those three team members, what can be created in reference to the solar eclipse. So that originally started in fall of 2022. Chuck had inquired, do you know a scientist that would potentially be interested? And having been here at SIU, photographing the 2017 eclipse and going to various workshops, that's where I met Bob Baer initially. So when Chuck had inquired, do you know anyone? I immediately thought of him. So Bob is very busy, a very busy man who deals with a lot of NASA initiatives, a lot of NASA research that explores solar eclipse studies. So he agreed. Fast forward to February of 2023, we were asked to develop a proposal. Didn't have to be fleshed out, but we had to demonstrate to Simons Foundation that we are capable of executing such a project. So the original idea, I mean, it was just a seed of an idea.
Let's not go back that far.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go from when did the funding come in, and then what did you start?
Right, so the funding came in February in 2023. There was funds to actually develop your idea, think about all the logistics, any traveling, any additional research. Later in that year, they selected, I believe it, can't remember if it was 6 or 7 teams. Were actually granted full funding based on your projected budget. So we had to finalize materials, what the actual project would be, and we received full funding. And that, I want to say that maybe that was in the summer of 2023, maybe May or June is when we learned that the full funding was available, which we then learned that Carbondale was going to be the first stop for Simons Foundation, which did happen in late January. So thinking about it, really had 6 months to gather resources, get into production mode, get into the dark room, sculpting, really doing as many tests as possible with materials and taking in consideration of the distance. Materials have to travel from California or upstate. So it was a huge endeavor, a lot of logistics. I learned that an artist also needs to be a project manager. But fortunately we were able to deliver on the promise and provide the public and art space with a wonderful exhibit. And Simons Foundation, they sent 2 representatives from their institution came and also partook in the festivities and the celebration, and they were very impressed with what we ended up displaying.
Excellent. If this was to exist somewhere else, do you have an image of where it would be, like
Well, this exhibit, it'd be wonderful if this exhibit existed in a high traffic pedestrian zone. Could be the new modal transportation center, or possibly the Southern Illinois Airport. Those 2 locations receive a lot of foot traffic. Those are the first 2 locations that come to my mind. Of course, SIU, if they have an area to install the centerpieces or even the illuminated side panels. There could be other institutions like John A. Logan. It's possible, there's 2 wall pieces, one's Kaskaskia, another one's Shawnee, and there are 2 community colleges that share the name Kaskaskia Community College and Shawnee Community College. I mean, I don't know if the pieces need to both be together or if it makes sense to have them separate at different locations. But the top 2 would be the transportation center the airport.
Great, is there anything else you'd like to say that I didn't get to?
This would not have been possible. Well, one, obviously the funding coming from Simon's Foundation, and there was also Banterra Bank. They also provided additional support. But this wouldn't have been possible if the School of Art and Design at SIU provided me with some temporary studio space, because there was a point, especially before the fall semester of 23 started, I was producing this in a very small room in my house or in my home. So the importance of artists having a dedicated studio space to spread out and to tinker and to store. And also the School of Art and Design, I did lean on some of my colleagues who has expertise in industrial design, as well as an understanding of working with a 3D printer and a laser engraver. So working with other professionals in the School of Art and Design helped fast track, and so I can meet certain deadlines.
Great. Can we just say that all in a much sort of like, just like you want to thank the Simons Foundation,
Sure.
the School of Art and Design, and there was one other,
School of Art and Design.
at SIU.
Banterra, yeah.
And the Banter, yeah.
Right. So definitely want to acknowledge some wonderful partners. The funding of Simon's Foundation, in addition to the Banterra Center. I'm sorry, let me back up.
Started it, yeah.
Yeah, getting athletics in my mind. I'd like to express acknowledgement and thanks to the Simons Foundation for their generous funding, as well as the Banterra Bank, and the use of studio space offered by the School of Art and Design at SIU.
Great. All right, so I think